Yes, folks, I have an insane theory about Rivian, and I'm gonna tell you about it in this video and see what you think. Before we get started with this, I should say that this is just a theory. I am active in the automotive industry, I follow along with what's happening, but I have no idea about the decision-making behind these two companies and why this is happening. I am basing this theory on the fact that these two automakers that I'm about to talk about in this video, actually three automakers, sort of kind of share common ground. You'll see what I mean in a second. And it's based on facts that I already know about certain markets, why this theory would make a lot of sense. But it's just a theory. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if this is something that will end up happening. I have no idea how this is going to go. But let's explore this theory, and it might make sense to you, it might not. You'll let me know in the comments below. Alright, so this theory starts with Rivian. Rivian is still an electric vehicle startup based in Illinois, the US state of Illinois. And their expertise is in electric vehicles, pickup trucks and SUVs. So they have the R1T and the R1S right now. Those vehicles are really big, and they're only really ever designed to be sold in North America. They weren't really intended to bring those vehicles outside of the US market and the Canadian market as well. Now, Rivian is one of the lucky few electric vehicle manufacturers to get an investment from a big legacy automaker, in this case, Volkswagen. Volkswagen invested, I don't know exactly how many $1 billion into Rivian. And as part of that, Rivian is going to provide Volkswagen with a lot of technology and different things like that. And from what I understood from the research I did on the internet, Volkswagen is going to help Rivian with their introduction to the European market. As a result of this whole endeavor, Rivian's got to work on two additional models that they'll be launching with in Europe. The R2, which, from what I can see from the dimensions, falls into the European D segment. It's about the same size as the Lincoln Co. 08 and stuff. And the R3, which is a sort of boxy rally-inspired electric hatchback sort of thing. It's still lifted like a little crossover, sort of like the Renault 4. I think that's what they're targeting. The Renault 4 is like a main competitor to the R3. And with these two models, Rivian plans an expansion into Europe beginning in 2026, which at the time of this recording is only a couple of weeks away. Now, Rivian has already set up shop in the Netherlands. That's where the European office is for Rivian. But there's a second office in Europe, and it's in Belgrade, Serbia, and it's called Rivian SE Europe. And from all of my years of, working with cars and reviewing cars, I know that SE stands for Southeast Europe. Now, this could just be an R&D hub, as they claim it is, just, I don't know if this makes sense, but I read something on the internet that it was like a brainstorming thing. It's an R&D facility in any case, it's just an office, but I also happen to think that it wouldn't make sense to invest in a second R&D office in a completely different region of Europe if you're not at least considering entering that part of the European market. Southeast Europe, or as you and I call it, the Balkans. Now, there's a small problem with that. The Balkans have not exactly warmed up to electric cars as of yet. Our infrastructure is terrible, and, the electric cars are still fairly expensive, depending on where you are. There are incentives to be had in some of the Balkan countries, not here, unfortunately. But electric cars are still expensive, and we're very old school, and we like our gas engines and things like that. A way more appealing prospect would be a plug-in hybrid or a range-extended EV. However, Rivian is not interested in range-extended EVs, which I think even on a global scale, that's a huge mistake, considering the direction that the market is heading in, and the fact that some of the Rivian R1T's main competitors, the Ram 1500 and the Ford F-150, are going to get extended range EV powertrains, and their fully electric versions were cancelled/discontinued. So anyway, it's a huge mistake that Rivian is not interested in range-extended EVs, but there is kind of a saving grace. Remember I mentioned earlier that Volkswagen has invested a huge amount of money into Rivian? Let's talk about another brand that Volkswagen fully funded the revival of. Scout Motors. I know you might think I'm insane, but hear me out, this might make sense when I'm done explaining it. Scout, for those of you that don't know, is an American car manufacturer that kind of, I don't want to say invented the SUV class, but definitely took it into the next level right after the Ford Bronco and things like that, and various Jeeps. Scout made SUVs all the way back in the late 60s and the early 70s, and Volkswagen recently brought back Scout motors as a fully electric brand. Currently, they're promoting two models, the Traveler, which is a big SUV, and the Terra, which is a pickup truck, although both vehicles are very similar, and they're both proper body-on-frame off-roaders, and you can even get the Terra with 37-inch tires. They recently showed pictures of that. Anyway, these two are obviously fully electric, and you can have them as either full EVs or with range-extended powertrains, with a little gasoline engine, almost certainly from the Volkswagen Group, that will act as a generator. And you won't be surprised to hear that, like, I don't know, 3/4 of all Terra and Traveler reservations are for the extended range versions, because the ease of refueling and just having a generator that massively increases your range is very appealing to a lot of people, especially those that off-road. So where am I going with this? Well, I think that Scout Motors might be a tiny bit instrumental to Rivian's expansion into Europe. Let me explain. Either we're going to see slightly restyled Terras and Travelers badged as Rivians with the extended range powertrains, or we're going to see Rivians reworked to fit these range extender powertrains. I know this seems ridiculous considering where things stand with both of these companies, but here's why I think this makes sense. Even though Rivian is a very limited appeal sort of automaker, there's not a lot of people that would say, especially here in the Balkans, but also most of Europe, there's not a lot of people that would go ahead and say, yes, I want a Rivian. I want a big, boxy, four-wheel drive sort of electric off-roader. Not a lot of people can say that, and especially not if it's electric, because I think that also the general sentiment for off-road vehicles in Europe is that they should not be electric, and that's evident in the fact that our hardcore off-roaders, you know, the 5 of them that are sold in the European market, are powered by gasoline. There's the Ineos Grenadier, which the review for which is coming up soon after this, by the way. There's the new Toyota Land Cruiser, again, gas only. And as soon as you start looking at other European markets where Chinese cars are more of a thing, there's the new Haval H9, which is a big four-wheel drive off-roader sort of thing. And we also get things like the Ford Ranger Raptor and some versions of the Volkswagen Amarok, the Toyota Hilux, again, some versions of that. All of this stuff has very limited appeal. And if Rivian comes into the picture and says, here's a great off-roader, which with a lot of practicality, but it's electric. Not really sort of bringing in customers instantly with that. Rivians and Scouts also have very limited appeal in the European market. So why not ever so slightly increase the appeal and create a little bit more of a buzz by offering them with range-extended powertrains? Because the moment a European buyer, and especially buyers from the Balkans, see that there's a gas engine doing something, that would be much bigger interest. But there's more to the equation. Electric cars are too freaking expensive, especially in Europe, because we love our taxes. Not all the Balkan countries have extreme taxes, but here in Macedonia, for example, a fully loaded Hyundai Ioniq 5 will cost you around $65,000. And we have absolutely no green incentives or government incentives to buy an EV. Nothing. The Toyota BZ4X is also 60 grand or more. The Renault Megane E-Tech Electric is 60 grand fully loaded. The one I reviewed almost 2 years ago now. Electric cars are stupidly expensive. And even though Rivian is promising that the R2 will start at, around $40,000, the Rivian R2 will still be built in the US. Rivian is not planning to build factories in Europe as of yet. And by the time you bring over the Rivian and you tack on the taxes and import duties and things, that could easily fetch 60 grand. And unfortunately, we have a lot of excellent 60 grand options that are plug-in hybrids or, gas engines and diesel engines in some cases. And potentially, I know that a range-extended powertrain adds complexity, but it could be a tiny bit cheaper to manufacture because in electric cars, a lot of the costs associated with them are the batteries, because the batteries are expensive. Range-extended EVs don't require as big of a battery. They can decrease the size of the battery, have the engine doing a lot of the generator work with its fuel tank and stuff, and hey presto, slightly cheaper vehicle. There's also the fact that the Rivian R3, which will be competing with the Renault 4 and the Renault 5 and things like that, we don't know about prices on that vehicle as of yet, but I think that it will also start at around $40,000-ish, at least by the time it arrives in Europe. That's well over 10 grand more than a base Renault 5, and about, again, 10 grand more than a base Renault 4. So, a range extended powertrain, I mean, maybe not on the R3, because the R3 has a different sort of target group, and there's not really enough room to fit a range extending powertrain in that anyway. But the R2 and the ready-built range-extended EV Scouts, maybe they'll get some Rivian-specific styling, and they'll be sold in Europe as Rivians, which will also be helpful to expand the lineup. Rivian already has limited appeal in Europe, so does Scout, so why not, give buyers a little bit more of an incentive to at least take a look and consider, like, hey, we have these off-roaders, which are a lot more interesting than these other off-roaders, and we do have a gas engine to increase the range. So I think that at some point in the future, there is a chance, again, all of this is pure theory, nothing has been confirmed yet, and I know it sounds far-fetched, but I'm just, based on different statistics and knowledge that I have about the car industry in Europe and Southeast Europe especially, we could see something like this later down the line. Either Rivians inheriting range-extended powertrains from Scout vehicles, or Scout vehicles badged as Rivians being sold in Europe to a rather limited pool of customers, admittedly. And that's about it. Let me know what you think of this theory in the comments below. I'd love to hear some additional thoughts on this, because I was checking out news about Rivian entering the European market. I found info about the Belgrade office, and I started getting this sort of theory come up in my head. I'd love to hear what the rest of you have to think about this. And I guess we'll find out in good time. Thank you so much for watching this video, people. If you liked it, be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to those of you celebrating. And I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.